Action learning normally occurs in a small group of people, so it's typically somewhere between 6 to 8 people. And people bring live issues to the action learning set, and people take it in turns to present on those issues. So typically somebody could present, say, for 10 to 15 minutes uninterrupted on a particular issue. And then others in the group then help them explore that particular issue. And they go away with an action which they then try out in practice. So the action learning cycle itself always starts with experience. It then moves into reflection, and then it moves to analysis, hypothesis formulation, and that's particularly where set members can help. And then it moves into plans and actions.
I think the reason I became involved in the action learning was to use it as another tool to improve my personal practice, and probably in turn then to help my team improve their practice as well.
It seemed an ideal opportunity to meet with other managers who have a similar job to myself that would actually help us to discuss and exchange ideas.
The action learning approach was something I hadn't done before. It was quite an interesting way of learning, and it was particularly good at actual very nitty-gritty problem solving, and that was very beneficial, and I think everyone felt that within the action learning sets.
I think I wanted to achieve improved management and supervision of my staff, looking at the sort of gut reactions that social workers can have as part of their assessment, I was able to help them look at that, what that might be about, and using that constructively in achieving a better risk assessment.
The project was aimed at referral and assessment team managers in the southwest region of England. It was to help them improve their supervision practice of frontline work. It was to help them become more analytic, reflective in inquiring, more creative in their supervision practice, have greater consistency around thresholds and practice standards, and also, perhaps most importantly, to share practice across the region.
And to really be able to just discuss, reflect, sometimes argue or debate all the issues that are faced by team managers and teams.
Having time to reflect and to compare notes. In addition, there was some very useful input teaching which sparked our reflection on the work that we'd done and the dilemmas that we had.
Well, this project was quite, in some ways for an action learning set, was a little bit unusual in that we had a content element to start with in each action learning set, and then we've had that was followed then by a more experiential session where they went into action learning set trios and so forth. The content element was co-generated with action learning set participants, and so it covered a range of issues of particular concern to referral and assessment team managers and how they went about assessing cases and making decisions.
I've learnt from this programme that how important reflective practice is, which sometimes I think gets lost in the pace of the work that we do. So it gave me an opportunity to use some of the tools that we were given by Jocelyn to enable that to be put into practice and to enable the social workers that I supervise to actually reflect more on the work that they do.
One of the big pieces that we looked at was really about giving credibility back to social workers' emotional responses to situations, so that when a social worker comes out of seeing a family, particularly on that first visit, you know, never met the family before, it's an initial assessment, they go in and they come out and, you know, they've got the information from the referrer, they've got the story, because we go and listen to family stories about what their situation is. So they've heard that from the family, they've spoken to the child, they've seen the home environment, they've maybe spoken to health and education, but actually their feeling from that home visit was that actually there's some gut feeling they have that something's not quite right, that there's something else going on there, that they haven't quite sussed out what it is. Supervision is an ideal time to sit down and kind of unpick that, and that's something I have really used a lot.
Perhaps most importantly, the skills that I brought to supervision and what I was already doing right, but also the extra things that I could bring, both in terms of analysis of what was happening in cases, support and validation to the social workers, and also feeling empowered also to focus on the emotional responses of the social worker, which are so important.
A unique feature of the project was that we developed practice standards as the project progressed, which became much closer to practice. So, for example, we had very interesting discussions around how you record the all-important reflective component of supervision. We also had discussions around the advisability of undertaking home visits with newly qualified staff. So you could just check out their understanding of a situation. All these kinds of measures can actually get much closer to practice and tell you a lot more about quality.
And linked to that, having new members of staff, newly qualified members of staff, where it's important for the team manager to get an understanding of how they perceive the case they're working on. And to that end, I decided to change my supervision style. I decided to include visits with the social workers on their particular cases, so that I could get a very quick feel for how that individual social worker was assessing the case.
We have a team briefing every week whereby particular issues or cases are then discussed within the group, and they are able to be reflective on perhaps what they did at the time, what they could have done better.
So it's allowed me to be much more reflective rather than very process driven in how you supervise.
We are able to openly and honestly discuss the case, to acknowledge that they may not and I may not have all the answers at that particular time, and it's fine to say I don't know.
Through supervision, which is a really vital tool in helping the social worker be as effective as possible, the learning from the programme has helped me to validate their sort of gut reactions in the work that they do. Also looked at some strategies to try and unpick what that might be about, so you get a better picture and a better analysis of what's happening. And then finally, I think it's focusing on how the child feels within that, trying to put themselves in the place of the child so that they get an even clearer picture of what the lived reality is for that child.
I think the key aspect of this project was that we co-generated the research that those frontline managers most needed in their day-to-day supervision of referral and assessment work. And that then increased their knowledge base and confidence to make really complex practice decisions around cases. It also improved the practice standards within their teams. They were able to use a lot of the materials, for example, in case discussions within their teams, and that kind of led to a cascade of learning within each particular local authority.
And I think the mentoring system was also something that was new to me, which I found very helpful.
One mentor actually saw her 4 mentees in a group session, so that was an addition to the actual action learning set.
And having a mentor really assisted in working through perhaps the issues. We'd been to an action learning set, and then I would go back and have a session with my mentor and talk through what those issues were, and actually that was really beneficial, because then that enabled me then to sort of mentor my workers and made me feel more confident in doing it.
Supervisions particularly are feeling more focused and more useful, and I think I've always been a great one for supervision anyway, but I think they are altogether more effective and more beneficial to the social workers, and they are reporting that back, that they find that a definite improvement.
The project was very, very successful. We did an extremely thorough evaluation in that we collected evaluation evidence on an ongoing basis with Action Learning Set participants and mentors. We also did 2 online surveys with mentors and Action Learning Set participants, and we also did a small focus group at the end of the project in each of the 2 Action Learning Sets to really capture the stories of change. People reported things like becoming much more child-centred in their practice. So they were actually able to pick up the child's story much, much more in supervision. Participants particularly valued the learning from each other in the action learning sets. There was a sense, that I think sometimes local authorities can almost reinvent the wheel, really, and there's so much good practice that was going on in the region, and it was really good for participants to tap into that.
Personally, I found it extremely rewarding, and I hope it's the beginning of ongoing training and contact with other colleague team managers.
An action learning sets can have a really big impact on managers and their supervision, and that feeds into social workers and their practice, and ultimately to the service we provide for children and families.
It links so much to your day-to-day practice. It's so relevant that I would highly recommend it.
For me, it was the best way of learning from your colleagues, from your peers, and actually sharing ideas. It's really helped.